the third shift. I worked nights in a distribution warehouse for 2 years, big place. The kind where you could drive a forklift for a full minute in a straight line and still not reach the other end. I'm not going to tell you I saw a ghost. I wish it were that simple. What happened to me is worse than a ghost, because a ghost is something out there, in the dark, that you can run away from. What I'm about to tell you, I couldn't run away from. Because by the end of it, I wasn't sure. It wasn't me. The warehouse ran 3 shifts, but nights were a skeleton crew. After 1 a.m., when the last trucks were loaded out, it was down to just 2 of us, covering the whole floor. Me and a guy named Petro. Older guy, quiet, been there longer than anyone. We'd split the building. He took the north end, I took the south, and we'd radio each other every hour or so. All good? All good. That was it. That was the whole night. The place was loud during the day and dead silent at night. Just the hum of the freezers in the cold storage section and the motion sensor lights. That's the detail that matters, so hold on to it. The lights ran on motion sensors. You walked into an aisle. The lights over that aisle came on. You left, and after a minute, they shut off behind you to save power. So all night long, you could stand at one end of the floor and watch the building track movement. Lights coming on where someone was walking, lights going dark where they'd left. You could see where people were just by watching the lights. And that's how it started. Not with a sound, not with a figure. With the lights coming on in an aisle where I knew there was no one standing. I want to tell you I figured it out that first night. I didn't. It took me almost a week to understand what the lights were really showing me, and by then, it was already too late to unknow it. First night it happened, I'm at the south end on the forklift. And across the floor, way over in the far aisles, a bank of lights clicks on. Now, that's not strange by itself. That's Petro's end, so I keyed the radio. Petro, you over in receiving? Long pause. Then, no. I'm up in the north office, doing the counts. The north office is nowhere near receiving, and receiving is nowhere near me. So I'm watching these lights. On, steady. Somebody's standing there steady. In an aisle where, by both our counts, nobody is. And I'm telling myself, sensor glitch. A bird got in. A box fell. The lights stay on about a minute. Then they shut off. And then the next aisle over, lights up. Then the next, something was walking. Aisle to aisle. Steady pace. Straight down the row. Toward the center of the floor. I tracked it by the lights. Click, click, click. Like watching a cursor move across a screen. Toward the one aisle that sat dead center of the building. The long one. We called it the spine. I radioed Petro and told him what I was seeing, and here's where it stopped being funny. He went quiet, and then he said, real low. What time is it? I said a little after 3, and he said, get on your forklift and come up to the north office. Right now. Don't go down the spine, and don't watch the lights. Whatever you do tonight, don't stand there counting the lights. I should have listened to him. Petro had been there 15 years. When a man who's seen everything tells you not to look, you don't look. I looked. Because I'm only human, and there were lights coming on in an empty building, and I had to understand it, so I stayed at my end. And I watched. And, God help me, I started counting the aisles as they lit up, tracking the thing's progress down the spine. And that's when the second wrong thing happened. The lights weren't just coming on ahead of it anymore. They were staying on, behind it. A whole trail of lit aisles, stretching back across the floor. Which only happens if something is still standing in each one. Which would mean it wasn't one thing walking. It was a lot of things, a whole column of them. And they were all moving down the spine, toward the center. Where the aisles met, in an open square we used for staging. I keyed the radio to tell Petro, and the radio, Petro's voice, said in my ear, perfectly calm, how many have you counted? I said I didn't know. 12 aisles, maybe more. And Petro said, and I felt the floor drop out of me, I'm not on the radio. I've been standing right next to you for the last 5 minutes. I turned. He was right there. Beside the forklift, white-faced, his radio clipped to his belt, and switched, off. So whose voice had just asked me how many I'd counted? Petro grabbed my arm and walked me to the break room, the windowless one. Lights always on, no sensors. And I asked him straight, what is it? What's out there? He wouldn't tell me. He just shook his head and he said, if I tell you what it is, you'll start looking for it. And the worst thing you can do in this building is go looking. All he'd give me was the rule. The old hands had one rule, passed down, never written down anywhere. You don't count them. Because the lights aren't just showing you where they are. Counting them tells them you can see them. And then he said the part that kept me out of that building for good. He nodded at the radio on my belt, and he said, "That voice, the one that asked how many you'd counted." He'd gone gray. That's never happened. Not to anyone. The lights, yes. The walking, yes. Something that talks back? In 15 years, never. And he looked at me, like I was already different from when I'd clocked in. "Why?" he said. "Is it talking? To you?" He wouldn't say another word about it. We just sat in that bright little room and waited for the sun. When the day crew rolled in, loud and ordinary, I went home, and I told myself I'd never work another night in my life. And I didn't. I quit that morning, same as I'd promised myself. But before I left, I did one thing. I needed to know I hadn't lost my mind, so I went to the security office, and I asked them to pull the motion sensor logs for the night. Every system logs it, every light, every trigger, time-stamped. If the lights had really come on in empty aisles, it'd be in the data, in black and white. And I'd know, I wasn't crazy. The day manager humored me, pulled the log up on his screen. And there it was, 3:04 a.m., a cascade of sensor triggers, running right down the spine, aisle after aisle, exactly as I'd watched it happen. Real, logged, provable. And I felt this huge wave of relief. I'm not crazy. It happened. It's in the system. And then the manager frowned at the screen. And he said, "Huh, that's weird." I asked what. He pointed at the trigger data. Each sensor logs which device set it off. And he said the triggers going down the spine weren't the aisle motion sensors at all. They were all tagged to one device ID. One tag. Following the exact path I'd watched the lights take. All the way down to the staging square. The body-worn motion tag clipped to a forklift. My tag. My forklift. I must have made a sound. Because the manager looked up and asked if I was okay, and I asked him. Because I had to know. What was down there? Dead center. The staging square. What that part of the building was. He shrugged, like it was nothing. Said it was the oldest section. The part they'd built the new racking on top of. There'd been some accident back in the day. Before the rebuild. A collapse. On a night shift. People killed. Company put the shelving up over it and never marked the spot. Benny went back to looking at the log. And that's when Petro's rule and that log on the screen clicked together. Into the one thing I have never been able to live with. Understand what that log was telling me. The lights down the spine didn't come on because a dead night shift was walking the aisles where the roof came down on them. They came on because one person drove a forklift slowly down the center of that warehouse at 3 a.m, aisle by aisle, all the way to the staging square where they died, tripping each sensor in turn. The log had the tag ID. The tag ID was mine. The forklift was the one I'd been sitting on. Except I never moved it. I swear to you, on everything I have. I sat at the south end the entire time, and I watched the lights from 100 yards away. Petro was standing next to me. He'll tell you the same. The forklift never moved. But the system says it did. The system says I drove the whole length of that building, straight into the dead center, and parked it in the staging square. And here's the thing the manager said next. The thing I left that building and never went back over. The thing I still can't sleep on. He said, "Yeah, somebody parked one dead center overnight. Maintenance had to drag it back this morning. I never drove it there, but somebody, wearing my tag on my machine, drove that forklift down the spine to finish the third shift's last walk. And the only reason that truly terrifies me is that on the log, the forklift made the trip down the spine twice. Once at 3:04 and once at 6:55. 5 minutes before the day crew arrived. 5 minutes before I clocked out and walked to my car, certain I'd never once moved from the south end all night long. I don't know where I was for those 5 minutes. I've never known. I worked nights at a gas station on a long, empty stretch of highway for about a year. I quit a long time ago, found other work, moved towns, got a normal life with normal hours. It didn't matter. Some jobs don't end when you walk out the door. Some of them follow you home. And I'm going to tell you exactly when I realized mine had. The station sat by itself. No town for 20 miles in either direction. Just flat highway running dead straight to the horizon, both ways. The kind of flat where you can see headlights coming for a full 2 minutes, before the car ever reaches you. Remember that. The headlights. It matters. I worked the graveyard shift, 11 at night to 7 in the morning, alone. Just me. The hum of the coolers, the buzz of the lights over the pumps, and the bell. There was a little brass bell on a bracket over the front door. Every gas station has one. Door opens, bell rings. Ding. So the clerk knows somebody's come in, even if your back's turned, stocking shelves. After a few weeks, you stop hearing it consciously. It just becomes the rhythm of the night. Bell rings, someone's here. No bell, you're alone. I trusted that bell, completely. That was my first mistake. There was something else in that station I should mention. Taped under the front counter, where customers couldn't see it, was a laminated index card. Handwriting on it. Faded. I'd noticed it my first week, and I figured it was some old joke from a clerk before me. I ignored it for 3 weeks. The night this happened, I finally read it, and I wish I'd read it sooner. It's a little after 3 in the morning, dead time. I'm behind the counter, restocking the cigarettes, my back half to the door. And a voice right in front of me says, "How far to the next town?" I about jumped out of my skin, because there's a man standing at my counter. Close, right there, and the bell hadn't rung. I told myself I just hadn't heard it, maybe I was zoned out. But here's the thing that got under my skin in the next half second. I looked past him, out the big front windows, at the pumps, no car, empty lot, and down that dead straight highway, both directions, no taillights, no headlights, nothing. I would have seen him coming for 2 solid minutes. He hadn't come from anywhere. I made myself look at him, ordinary, middle-aged, a plain dark coat, hands in his pockets, calm. The only wrong thing about him was that he was too still. He didn't shift his weight. He didn't blink quite enough. He just stood there, waiting for an answer, with a patience that didn't belong to a man asking directions at 3 a.m. I told him the next town was 20 miles north. He said, "Thank you," and he turned, and he walked out the door, and as the door opened, the bell rang. Ding. Normal, on the way out. It just hadn't rung on the way in. That's when I remembered the card under the counter, and I crouched down, and I actually read it. The faded handwriting, line by line. It was a list. Rules. Written the way you'd write rules for the next person, not for yourself. It said, "A man may come in at night. You will not see him arrive. The bell will not ring when he enters, only when he leaves. Do not go outside while he is here. Do not tell him your name. Do not answer his last question. Wait for the sun. He cannot stay past the sun." I read it 3 times. My hands were not steady, because everything on that card had just happened. The no bell, the no car, and I'd had no way of knowing it in advance, but somebody before me had. Somebody before me had written it down. I wanted to believe it was a prank, a clerk messing with the new guy. I held on to that for about 40 minutes, and then, with no bell, he was at my counter again. Same spot, same stillness, and this time he said, "Is there anyone else here with you tonight?" And every instinct I had said lie. So I did. I said my manager was in the back office, doing paperwork. He didn't smile. He just looked, slowly, toward the back office. Like he could see straight through the wall, to the empty room behind it. Like he already knew the room was empty and was only checking. "That's good," he said. And then, quieter, "I was hoping someone else was here." And he turned and he left. Ding, on the way out. Always, only, on the way out. I had the rules now. I knew the moves. Don't go outside. Don't give my name. Wait for the sun. I thought knowing the rules meant I was safe. I didn't understand yet that the whole night had been him, walking me toward the one rule I wouldn't see coming. The 3rd time, the sky outside was just barely starting to go gray. Almost dawn. Almost safe. No bell. He was at the counter, and he didn't ask about the town or about anyone else. He looked right at me, calm as ever, and he asked his last question. He said, "Are you ready to go now?" And it was the gentlest thing, not a threat, an invitation. The way you'd ask a kid at the end of a long day who's fighting to stay awake, "Are you ready to go now?" Like leaving with him was the most natural thing in the world. Like I'd been waiting for him to ask. And God help me, I wanted to say yes. Some part of me, some tired, animal part, leaned toward that open door behind him and the gray light, and just wanted to go. My mouth was already opening, and the rule screamed in my head, "Do not answer his last question." So I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I clamped my mouth shut, and I looked at the floor, and I said nothing. The silence stretched out forever. And then the sun cleared the horizon. Light came flat across the lot, through the windows, across the counter. When I looked up, he was gone. No bell. He didn't even get the courtesy of the ring on the way out this time. I made it to 7. I quit that morning. So here's why I'm telling you this. Here's how I know. It didn't stay at that gas station. For a while, nothing. Months. I got a day job. I slept at night, like a normal person. I thought I'd gotten away clean. Refused the question. Beat the sun. Walked out. Then one night, in my own apartment, 50 miles from that highway, I woke up, a little after 3 in the morning, and I heard it. Ding. A little brass bell. The exact sound of the bell over that front door. In my apartment, where there is no bell, no door chime, nothing that makes that sound. I lay there in the dark, and I did not get up, and I did not answer, because by then, I understood what the bell means. The bell doesn't ring when he comes in. It only rings when he leaves. So when I hear that ding in the dark, soft, polite, somewhere in my home where it has no business being, it doesn't mean he's arriving. It means he was already inside. And he's just stepped out again. To wait. I never answered his last question. I think that's the only reason I'm still here, to tell you this. But it's been years now, and the bell still rings. A little after 3, soft and polite. Somewhere in the dark of whatever home I'm in, and I'll be honest with you, because there's no point lying about it anymore. I'm so tired, and sooner or later, I think, I'm going to answer. Every night, security guard learns the building they watch. Not just the layout, the rhythm of it. Which doors stick, which lights buzz, which way the wind makes the loading bay rattle at 3 a.m. You learn it so well that after a while, you stop watching the monitors. You just feel it when something's wrong. One night, something was very wrong, and by the time I felt it, it was already standing behind me. I worked overnight security at a corporate office complex. 11 floors, 2 towers, joined by a glass sky bridge, a big, empty parking structure underneath. From 10 at night to 6 in the morning, it was me. A desk, a wall of monitors, and about 40 cameras. The cleaning crew left by 11. And after that, the only living thing in that building for 7 hours was me. And the cameras. I'd been there about a year, so I knew the feeds cold. Camera 1 was the main lobby. That one pointed right at my own desk, so I was always on it. This little gray figure at the bottom of the screen. Cameras 2 through 5 covered the elevators and the stairs. And camera 6, remember 6. Because this whole thing is about 6. Camera 6 covered the back hallway on the ground floor. The dead-end one. Nothing down there but a locked freight elevator nobody had used in years. One way in, one way out. Right past my desk. And here's the thing I'd never thought hard about until that night. For anyone to be down there, they had to walk past me first. I want to be clear about that detail, because it's the detail that still keeps me up. Nobody came down that hall that night. I'd swear it on anything. And that is exactly the part I can't explain. So it's about 1:30 in the morning. I'm half watching the wall, doing a crossword, and something makes me look up at the back hall. There's a man at the end of it, just standing there, facing the freight elevator, with his back to the camera. Dark clothes, arms at his sides, completely still, not leaning, not waiting for the elevator. The elevator didn't even work, just standing. The way you'd stand if you walked into a room and forgot why. My first thought wasn't fear. It was annoyance. Somebody got in. So I did my job. I keyed up the radio. I said, "Anybody on the ground floor?" Into the dead air. And I got up to walk down there myself. The whole way down that hall, I'm rehearsing what I'll say. "Sir, this is a secured building." I turned the corner into the dead-end hallway. Empty. No man. No door he could have gone through. The freight elevator was locked. I checked the handle. It didn't budge. Just a cold, empty hallway. And the camera up in the corner. Its little red light, watching me stand there alone. I went back to the desk, telling myself he'd slipped out while I was walking. Tight, but possible. And for about 40 minutes, nothing. Then I looked at the back hall again. He was back. Same spot. Back to the camera. Except now, he wasn't at the elevator end of the hall. He was halfway down it. Closer to the camera. Closer to me. And I hadn't seen him walk past my desk to get there. I told myself a dozen things in the next 10 seconds. Camera glitch. A loop. Tired eyes. I believed every one of them, right up until the freight elevator started to move. There's a floor indicator above the freight elevator doors, an old brass dial, the kind with a needle. Dead for years. I knew it was dead because it always sat pointing at G. For ground, never moved. On the monitor, in the dark, that needle was climbing. 2, 3, 4. Something was running that elevator from the inside. I called it in for real this time. Told dispatch I had a possible intruder and an elevator moving on its own. They said they'd log it. And while I was still on the phone, not even looking at the wall, I heard my own voice trail off because I glanced back up at the monitor. The man was right under the camera now, right at the bottom of the dead-end hall, directly below the lens. And he wasn't facing the elevator anymore. His head was tilted all the way back, looking straight up, into the camera, into me. I still couldn't see a face. Just the pale underside of a chin, and the top of a head, and the wrongness of a neck bent that far back. I hung up on dispatch. I needed to know what I was looking at, so I did the one thing I could do from that desk. I pulled the building's incident log on the system, and I searched the freight elevator. And there it was, one sealed entry, years old, before my time. The freight elevator had been decommissioned, not broken, sealed. After an accident, a maintenance worker had been doing a repair on the car, and the brake failed, and the car dropped, and he'd been in the shaft when it came down. He didn't die in the elevator. He died at the bottom of it, at the ground floor, at the dead end of that hallway. The report had one note, flagged by the company that took over the contract after it happened. Just procedural, just dry. It said all overnight staff were to keep the ground floor freight corridor under continuous watch. It didn't say why. I think I finally understood why. I should have walked out of that building right then, out the front, into the parking lot, and never come back. But I made the mistake of looking back at the wall, at the back hall. The freight elevator doors were open, and the hallway was empty. The man was gone. For one stupid, hopeful second, relief washed over me. It was over. He got in the elevator. He was gone. And then I looked at camera 1, the lobby. My camera, the one pointed at my own desk, where I sat, watching myself, as a little gray figure at the bottom of the screen. I wasn't the only figure on it anymore. There was a man standing directly behind my chair, dark clothes, arms at his sides, head tilted all the way back, looking up, at the lobby camera, at himself, at us. On the screen, he was 18 inches behind me. I did not feel anyone there. There was no breath, no cold, no sound. Just the image on the monitor of a man standing over me while I sat there looking at it. I want to tell you I spun around fast. I didn't. It took me a long, long time to turn my head, because some animal part of me already knew that if I turned around, he wouldn't be there, and he wasn't. I turned back to the monitor. The lobby was just me again, one little gray figure, alone, at the bottom of the screen. I walked out the front doors, and I waited in the parking lot for sunrise. I never finished the shift. I never went back for my last paycheck. And to this day, the thing I can't shake isn't the man behind my chair. It's the elevator. Because from the ground floor, that freight car only goes one direction, down, into the shaft, where he died. So when those doors opened and the hallway was empty, he didn't go down. Whatever stepped out of that elevator wasn't trying to leave the building. It had somewhere to be. It was coming for the one person who'd been watching it all night. The one person who couldn't stop watching. Me.
The thing nobody tells you about working nights in a hospital is that the building changes after 2 a.m. The lights hum louder. The hallways get longer. And eventually, you learn there are some doors you don't open twice. I learned that the hard way. And before that shift was over, I saw something that made me transfer off nights for good. I was a floor nurse, mid-20s, med-surg unit, 7 at night to 7 in the morning, 4 nights a week. It was a quiet floor, the kind of place where the scariest thing should have been a 4 a.m. call light, because somebody wanted more ice. Room 4 sat at the dead end of the hall, past a bend where the overhead lights flickered, no matter how many times maintenance fixed them. And here's the first thing that mattered. Room 4 was closed, empty for weeks. A plumbing issue, they said. Bed stripped, door shut, taken right off the assignment board. Nobody told me why it was really closed. I found that out myself, around 6 in the morning, and I wish I hadn't. So the night this started, I'm at the nurse's station, around 2:40 a.m., just me and one other nurse, Dana. She was on break in the back, and a call light goes off on the board. Room 4. I stared at that little light for a good 10 seconds, because there was nobody in room 4, no patient, no bed made up, nothing but an empty room with the door shut. Electrical glitch, I told myself. The whole floor was old, so I reset it. Light goes off. Fine. 40 seconds later, it comes back on, so I walk down there, heart going a little. But I'm telling myself it's the wiring. I get to the end of the hall, around that flickering bend, and I push open the door to room 4. Empty, bed stripped, and cold, the kind of cold that doesn't belong indoors. The kind that gets into your teeth. And the call remote, the little pillow button on its cord. It was sitting in the middle of the stripped mattress, pressed down, held. There was no one there to hold it. I put it back on the hook, and as I turned to leave, I heard it click behind me. That soft, plastic click of the button going down. I did not turn around. I told myself I didn't hear it. I walked back to that station with my skin crawling. And I did not look back down the hall. That click was nothing compared to what I saw 20 minutes later. But I need to tell you about Dana first. For about an hour, nothing. I almost convinced myself it was the building. Then Dana comes back from break, and she's white as paper. And she says, I remember it exactly. Did you go in 4? I said, yeah. The call light kept going off, and she goes, there's a woman in there, sitting on the bed, facing the window. I told her that was impossible. I had just been in there, so we went together. Doors shut again. I open it. And this is the part I need you to hear, because this is the part that's mine, not Dana's. The room was empty, but the chair by the window, which had been pushed flat against the wall an hour earlier, I had seen it against the wall, was now turned to face the bed, and in the middle of that stripped mattress, in the cold, there was a deep impression, like someone heavy had just been sitting there, and I watched it. I stood in that doorway, and I watched the foam slowly rise back up, like the weight had only just lifted. Dana didn't say anything. She just backed out of the doorway, and I followed her. That did something to me. I needed an explanation, a normal one, and what I found in that file was so much worse than no explanation at all. So when Dana took the next round, I sat down and I pulled up room 4's history. There had been a patient, an elderly woman, long-term care, almost a month in that room, and her chart was full of the same incident note, night after night, written by 3 different nurses. Patient repeatedly using call light. Reports a visitor seated in the chair by the window, no visitor present. Patient reassured and redirected. She had died in that room. Time of death logged 2:47 a.m. I looked at the clock. The call light that started all this had gone off at 2:47. But here's the part that isn't, trust me, weird stuff happened. Here's the part I can't explain away. Stapled into the back of that old file was a formal occurrence report, the kind you only file when something goes wrong enough to need a paper trail. It had been filed by the last nurse who worked room 4 as an active room, right before they closed it. And the report wasn't about the patient. It was about the night after the patient died. The nurse had gone in to finish stripping the bed and found the call remote pressed down on an empty mattress in a freezing room. Exactly what I had found. She wrote that she put it back on the hook, and then she wrote one more line. And in the scan of it, you could see her handwriting getting smaller toward the end of the sentence, like the pens slowed down. When I turned around, the chair was facing me. They closed room 4 that week. It was never the plumbing. I should have stopped there. I should have stayed at that station until sunrise. But the room wasn't done with me yet. At 6:40 a.m., almost shift change, the light for room 4 came on one last time, and I don't know what made me do it. Maybe I just needed proof. Something I could hold that would make it ordinary. So I took out my phone as I walked down that hall. Camera open, the screen up in front of me like a shield. If I had a picture, I told myself, it couldn't be real. I reached the door. I pushed it open. Empty room. Cold air rolling out over my feet. And I held up the phone and I took the photo through the doorway. I didn't look at it there. I finished my shift. I clocked out. And I didn't open it until I was sitting in my car in the parking lot, with the sun coming up over the building. In the photo, the room is empty. Bed stripped. Chair by the window, except the chair is turned toward the camera. And there's a shape sitting in it. Pale, in a hospital gown, hands folded in its lap. You can't see the face. The flash didn't reach that far back into the room, but you can see that it's leaning forward, like it was just about to stand up. I transferred off nights 2 months later. I've never deleted the photo, but I haven't opened it in years either. The last time I did, I noticed something in it. I don't remember being there the first time.